Hello, BookTube. It's day 17 of Nonfiction November. That's an event that I've been talking about all November long. Uh, I just noticed that I'm looking a little more scrofulous and homeless than usual today. It's an event created and hosted by Gemma at Nonfic Books and Olive at A Book Olive. I've been talking about it all month long, and yet I just realized this morning that I've almost never linked to them, despite the fact that I've been mentioning them every day. I will try to remember to link them today and every other day in November. But Nonfiction November, for those of you joining us late, is an event in which they encourage you to read more nonfiction, to read some if you don't read any, and to read more if you read only a little and would like to read more. It's a kind of an acknowledgement of the wonders of nonfiction, how wonderful it is, and I'm here to attest that that is true. It is, much as I love the made up stories, and much as I love watching the way they bring people together, like I've noticed in the last week or so, that Zadie Smith's novel Swing Time has just exploded in the critical world, of which I am a part. We're long and wonderful reviews everywhere discussing it. And that brings people together. You see 100 reviews of one particular novel, you're more likely to buy it and try it. And that creates a common conversation. And I love that. I absolutely love that. But there are elements that reading nonfiction can give you that fiction cannot do. Uh, a sense of participating in the record, a sense of checking people against their work. There's no way to assess. You can assess Swing Time by Zadie Smith in many, many ways. I'm very grateful that no editor asked me to do it, but you can assess it in many ways. But you can't hold it accountable to anything. You can't assess it against any kind of mean or norm. And that has its own attractions, and you can't do it with fiction. And you can with, for instance, a new 600-page book on the Battle of Guadalcanal. You can read it in a participatory sense that isn't present in fiction. I don't know if I'm making any of that clear. I will keep trying. uh, uh, and I am a little biased here because I am mostly a nonfiction critic. I almost never review fiction. And I read it. I read all fiction. I read, as friends of mine in the critical world have pointed out, I read more contemporary fiction than they do, even though it's their job to review it and not mine. I'm as big a fan as anybody of that feeling that a really good novel or even a really good passage in a novel will give you that just lifts you up out of yourself and just shines a light all over you. I absolutely love that, and I'm the first one to admit that only the most transcendent biography or history can do that. That really is the province of fiction. But I don't tend to review it, and so it's not professionally valid for me in that way, and that makes me more partisan when it comes time for something like Nonfiction November. It makes me more want to champion the stuff that I mostly read. And in November so far, I have been making recommendations sort of from the nonfiction canon to sort of cover the basics of nonfiction. I'm only a tiny fraction of it, but things that in the canon of nonfiction that I really liked. Because one of the things that always depresses me about nonfiction is that people find it intimidating. And if you find a new 600-page history on the Battle of Guadalcanal intimidating, well, how much more intimidating are you going to find a 600-page book from 400 years ago? I don't think that's valid. I mean, it is valid, of course. You know, these things have a more of a learning curve than picking up a novel in which somebody talks about, I don't know, upper middle class divorce in Connecticut. Everybody has a toehold in that world. You don't need a primer to figure it out. Whereas a 100-year-old history of the bubonic plague from 1666 is, if you pick it up, you find it at a used bookstore or whatever, or at the library, you're gonna feel sometimes maybe like it's a closed door. and you need to know more even to read it, much less to appreciate what it's doing really well. I think that whatever validity there is to that feeling is the fault of editors, not readers. A good editor, whether it be 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or 20 minutes ago, ought to approach their job with that in mind. Unless it's a scholarly monograph, their job ought to be to eliminate that feeling in readers, to make their work inviting. They don't always do that. And if they don't do that in the present day, how much more true is that of what you could call the classics of nonfiction, the canon of nonfiction? That's why great reprint houses are really helpful. Like my beloved Penguin Classics, all of those Penguin Classics have long introductory essays that attempt to ground you in what you're about to read, so that you have an idea of what it is. And the book that I want to recommend today is very long. It's 800 pages long at least, depending on the how much you put on the page. And I don't have that aid to give you, because Penguin Classics, for some mind-numbing reason, has never seen fit to make an edition of this book. It's a gigantic compendium of knowledge from 1621. It's called The Anatomy of Melancholy by Robert Burton. And in it, Robert Burton was incredibly smart, incredibly book-learned guy. I actually have a picture of him. There he is on his way to work one morning. And like most bookish people, he was prone to melancholy. He was prone to moods. In fact, in his own case, he was prone to something worse than moods. He was prone to what we would now call clinical depression. The black dog, as Winston Churchill called it, where it descends on you like a thick fog. It's different from a mood because it paralyzes you, and you know that. You can feel it happening, and you can't do anything about it. In the worst of it, you just have to wait. You just have to wait for it to pass, and hope that it does. You can't make yourself see the light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to hold on. And of course, suicide statistics show us how many people simply can't do that. They simply can't hold on, even though their mind is telling them this will pass. It's happened to you before, and it's passed every time. Even though their mind is telling them that, it's an amazing thing to know what we know now. I mean, we're in our infancy of understanding clinical depression. Even so, we know a million times more than Robert Burton did. And it's fascinating to read his book, knowing that it's his attempt to grapple with an entire body of knowledge. It's like earlier in this tedious marathon, I mentioned St. Augustine's Confessions, and while I was talking about St. Augustine's Confessions, I mentioned his great work, his thumper, his chunker, Civitas Dei, the City of God, in which the smartest man in the world attempts to put in the covers of one book a complete working model of the universe. A complete working model of the moral landscape of the universe. It obsessed St. Augustine. What is right and wrong? How does the universe actually work? And how do we work in it? And he tried to put it in a book. And I think that's amazing. I love those kinds of books. And The Anatomy of Melancholy is another such one of those. It's where Robert Burton was one of the smartest people in the world, certainly one of the best read people in his day, and he knew these things in himself. He knew people down the street, in his own family, right nearby, and also his dog. He knew people who didn't feel that fog descend. They never felt it. It wasn't part of how their mind worked. He knew that, and he knew that he did, and he wanted to understand that. And because he was a bookworm, because he was a dyed-in-the-wool reader, he used books to do it. And The Anatomy of Melancholy is a gigantic, bristling, organic encyclopedia of everything that he read, pulling it all together and syncretizing it to make a unified field theory of himself, and by extension, of everyone. the way we think, the way we feel, why we do it, where it comes from, how it expresses itself. And the result, I won't say that it doesn't have its dry spots. Of course, any book that long will have its dry spots. But the result is thrilling, absolutely thrilling. And it exists. You can find it. For instance, the New York Review of Books does a series for years they've done a series of paperback classics, and they do a big brick of Anatomy of Melancholy, a paperback that you can find. You could order it online. If you look on it, I'm sure if you search for it on Amazon, that's the first one that will come up. And it's not that expensive. So I wish there were. The critical apparatus in that New York Review of Books edition is virtually non-existent. A big Penguin classic, a big deluxe thing, could have an exhaustive opening essay and a glossary and notes in the back, and that's all you need. But lacking that, you at least have something. You at least have a modern text. People have periodically gone back to the Anatomy of Melancholy and reprinted it. So you can find it. And if you see it, as big and old, as intimidating as it looks, I encourage you to try it. You will like it. Especially when you're reading it, if you try it. Keep in mind that far from being intimidated, you actually have a leg up on the author, despite his incredible erudition, despite the fact that he read every book in his day that existed. You have a leg up on him. You understand more than he did about his own subject. So it becomes, like I said, it becomes thrilling to watch him try to figure it out with the tools he has at hand. So that's my nonfiction recommendation for today is, believe it or not, Anatomy of Melancholy by Robert Burton. I think you will like it if you try it. You can grapple with it your whole life. That's how deep a book it is. But I think you will like it. and I'm going to do my best to make my next nonfiction November recommendation a very short book. Even if I have to break chronological ranks to do it, I'm going to try and make the next one short. I might not succeed. Thank you, BookTube.